You cannot detox appropriately, especially not from like mold or other environmental toxicants, if you have chronic constipation. I lost count of which part this is, but this is the last part of my series on detoxification, going in depth into environmental toxin exposure, how that contributes to chronic disease, and how do you successfully detox from these. I know this series has been a little bit more informational, but it's important to kind of like get the information out there before we really go into like the solution planning. So just as a quick recap, when your body is trying to get rid of something that's toxic, it takes the toxic thing, it runs it through your liver, it runs it through phase one. Phase one will oftentimes attach a thing to the thing and make it a little bit more toxic than it originally was. You do not want to have your phase one intermediaries rolling around your body because that's often what causes symptoms. In order to catch these intermediaries, you need to send them through phase 2 detoxification. Now, phase 2 detoxification has multiple pathways that it can go through. It's kind of like a choose your own adventure sort of thing. And then phase 2 generally will put the declawed phase 1 intermediaries, so to say, make them more soluble, put them in the bile. And now it is the phase 3 pathway's job to be able to carry this toxic thing that you've conjugated out of your body, and so that you don't have to deal with it anymore. So on a more literal level, this is kind of what phase 3 looks like. Once the bile comes out of your liver, and your liver has different transporters that are like attributed to phase 3, what that means is that every time you have a phase 2 conjugation, it's still like kind of in your liver, right? And then there's like transporters that move that thing out of your liver into bile. Technically, on a broader level, phase 3 accounts for the bile into poop, and also kidneys into urine, and to a smaller degree, like the way that you detoxify through your breath and your skin as well. But let's focus on bile into poop right now. So the important piece about this is all of the toxic stuff that you put in your bile, you want to make sure that gets out of your body instead of being recirculated. I say recirculated because your body is really, what's the word? It's scrappy is not the right word, but it's really resourceful. It's really resourceful when it makes bile acids, because bile acids have a very helpful function in being able to digest your fats, and they're somewhat energy intensive to make bile acids. Your body wants to reabsorb the bile acids and like just use them. This is actually a very important function of the body, because there are some instances in which like people don't have the last part of their small intestine or more of their small intestine, and they haven't supplemented with bile acids, that if you make the liver make bile acids from scratch all the time, you can actually go into liver failure. So this is actually a really important part of the body. That aside, when you're trying to detoxify, you don't want like 90% of like a very high percentage of your bile acids being reabsorbed by the last part of your intestines, because what comes with it is the stuff that you were trying to get rid of. So in phase 3 detoxification, here's what you want things to look like. You want to have your bile come out of your gallbladder, be captured by either a binder or something like high fiber in your food, and have that move through your small intestines in a way that the bile is now like complex or bound up in the binder or the fiber, so that your small intestines can't reabsorb whatever is in this big mess over here. The reabsorption is called enterohepatic recirculation, and that's a thing that we're trying to work against when we were working in detoxification. And now here's the big obstacle in phase 3 detoxification as it comes with like mold detox, because bile acids also have a signaling role in your small intestine, where when your bile comes out into the first part of your small intestines, it signals something called the migrating motor complex. And the migrating motor complex is this coordinated action that goes through your entire intestine that makes it so that things move and then you can poop it out. Now, if you bind up all of the bile acids, then this signaling action isn't really there. And so bile, it will actually, so the contractions can still be there, but with bile, when it dumps into the duodenum, it produces a breaking, this breaking action in the last part of your small intestine, where it kind of stops it, and then it moves the front part so that the coordination can like move down in a good way that moves things actually out of your digestive system. Now, if you are trying to detoxify from mold toxins, and this is why the really strong protocols they don't work for all people. Like for some people where their bile flow is intact and they have nothing going on besides mold toxicity, this can work for them. But if somebody has like chronic SIBO, mold toxicity that has caused a lot of immune system dysfunction, that has predisposed them to MCAS and other sort of immune system dysfunction, then giving harsh binders can cause more problems than not, because if you're going to give a harsh binder like Welchol or cholestyramine, then what that will do is it will bind up a lot of the bile acids and actually prevent it from signaling. And the most common side effect of really strong binders like that is constipation. And if you can't move that chunk of clay bile thing out, then you're not going to detoxify appropriately. So in my clinical practice, at the very least, the most important part is to keep things moving. We can use gentler binders at first, but it's important that even with you would rather weaker binding in a way that moves out than stronger binding that kind of just sits there in your intestines, because that can irritate a lot more other things and cause a lot more immune system dysfunction or originated from the gut. And also, like, the bile has so many other functions that we both know and don't know about. So having appropriate amount of bile signaling in your small intestine can also stabilize mast cells in your small intestine. So if you have an NCAS and you bind up all of your bile, then you are more likely to have like more histamine responses in your small intestine if you just have completely bombed up all of your bile acids. So with phase 3 detoxification, the most important part is the movement of your intestines. You would rather have a weaker binder than intestines that don't move at all. And because I know this is a question that's going to be asked, activated charcoal, yes, that is a binder that is on the medium weak side-ish of the line. Zeolite clay is a little bit stronger because it's a little bit more charged. The strongest binders for sure are going to be like Welchol or like cholestyramine that are frequently used in mold detox protocols. I would say probably the gentlest binder is going to be something like a modified citrus pectin, because it's low molecular weight. It kind of binds, but is also very anti-inflammatory in its signaling in certain areas. Like chlorella is probably like a step just above that. So there's like a whole spectrum of binders that can be used. But again, you want to make sure that the intestines are moving. So regardless of the binders, you can have binders, but if you have a functional constipation or like a slow motility because of something like small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, that really needs to be addressed first to be able to clear phase 3 before you go into supporting phase 2 detoxification. And phase 2 detoxification has to be supported before you go into phase 1 detoxification, and that's where you can, once these 3 phases are cleared, is where you can really then push detox harder, use stronger herbals to make sure that your liver is conjugating, producing bile, and getting rid of it. So yeah, that's the end of the detoxification series. Let me know if you have any lingering questions. I will talk about the sulfation gridlock, so that's in the future plan, just so that you guys know. Thank you.